Good evening and welcome to Legal Tech Live, episode 50. I'm your host, Nick Rishwain, and of course, we are waiting for the co-host, Ivan Rakelin, who is traveling around the world and will be here shortly if he finds Wi-Fi that works. Tonight, we're having a returning guest, a whole bunch of guests returning. A couple of years ago, in episode 22, we interviewed Julia Shapiro of Hire An Esquire, and she's here today with her team. The team has grown significantly after I think that was about 3 years ago, and we wanted to talk about the growth and the excitement behind what they're doing. Hire An Esquire is, for those who didn't see that interview, they've been innovating the way legal professionals work since 2011. They reinvented legal staffing with a proprietary online platform that analyzes a candidate's experience and expertise to best match them with contract and permanent positions at law firms and legal departments of all sizes. First system of its kind. The result is efficient and flexible legal staffing built for a modern workforce. Today, they're leading the future of legal work, where talented and skilled attorneys are entrepreneurial and can build a career off of the rigid partner track. They've grown to 14 employees in 4 offices across the country, with a growing network of 9,000 plus vetted legal professionals and 100 plus registered AmLaw 200 firms, boutique firms, and in-house legal departments. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And we'll go through for our live viewers and our replay viewers. I want to hear who all is with us. So let's start with you, Julia.
So I'm Julia Shapiro. I'm the CEO and founder of Hire An Esquire. And I would like to note we've had quite a few updates since those numbers. I think they might be a bit old. We now have about 12,000 legal professionals, approximately 2% of the active U.S. attorney population. And we have to add a 0 onto the number of clients from before.
Nice.
Those are the main updates.
That's fantastic. I'm glad you shared that with us. And who do you have with you, since there's 2 of you in your screen? Who's with you tonight?
So I am currently in Philadelphia, normally based in San Francisco, but I've been visiting the Philadelphia office this week in between legal conferences. And I am here with Catherine Enck, who also was not a member of our team, I believe, when we spoke last, who joined us in late 2016 and is our COO. Catherine can further introduce herself.
Excellent.
Those are most of the pertinent details. I'm also, I'm in South Philly, so we're here in South Philly tonight.
Excellent. And also with us is your CTO, Lenny. And Lenny, it looks like we've just got Lenny on the screen. So can you tell us your full name and how long you've been with the company?
Hey, yeah. My full name is Lenny Pratt. I've been with the company for about 4 years at this point, actually. Started out as a web developer, but then kind of grew into the CTO role. So, I'm primarily just working on our website, helping out our dev team. And I'm also located here down in Pittsburgh, too. So we're on both sides of Pennsylvania.
Both sides of Pennsylvania. Outstanding. And lastly, but not least, of course, we have Eric Fox. Eric, tell us what your role is with the company.
Hey, I'm Eric. I'm the Director of People Analytics at Hire An Esquire. I'm an industrial organizational psychology practitioner. So essentially what I do is I specialize in assessment and selection of employees, and my expertise is in law, legal professionals. Yeah.
Outstanding. Yeah. And you guys have really gone into this industrial psychology stuff. I think I filled out your survey on this.
That was you.
That was me, just for kicks.
Connecting the dots now. Okay.
Yeah, now he's really analyzing me, probably going in the database right now. The red flags.
Only a couple, nothing to worry about.
Nothing too serious. Great. So, Julia, tell us how this came about. How did you guys decide to go? Because the psychology component was not a component in our last conversation.
Completely. And things have changed so much, and it is because of everybody here on the call with me. We have the time. I don't believe Lenny was our CTO yet. He's been a complete game changer as CTO, and is one of the most business-focused, product-focused engineers I've ever met, and he works very well with Eric. And Catherine managed to help us really scale and organize our operations in a way we never did before and really helped us grow. So I actually think that Catherine was fairly instrumental in Eric being hired. So but Catherine came in and, of course, like organized everything. Her nickname is the Cleaner.
Nice.
So Catherine came in. We were kind of a mess when she left, but she still loved us anyway. And she came in and cleaned everything up. And she realized we needed more recruiting resources. So she's, helped to start hiring more recruiters. And Eric was then a graduate student and finishing up his graduate work at Baroque. And we hired him as someone to help with recruiting part-time while he was finishing up school. And at the time we had a very great but difficult international luxury brand client. And they had a shrinking budget due to reorganization, but very, very high standards. So they wanted a, good lawyer with Ritz-Carlton concierge level skills, and they wanted it at a Walmart price. So
that's asking for quite a bit.
It was, but we had beat out quite a few vendors to get this contract, and we were really excited about it. We were determined to get it right. So of course our recruiting team was trying to figure out like what they valued and trying to get candidates that would work really well in the organization that would fit their budget and price range. And Eric was of course there and said, hey, why don't I try some of these things that I'm working on at school? And I should turn it over to Eric in a bit to give a better explanation.
Yes,
but
please.
Basically Eric's field of study is predicting performance based on quantifying what we would think of as intangibles, but you can actually quantify soft skills and those predict work performance. So Eric decided to test some of his research on these candidates. And suddenly we made this client very happy. They started being thrilled with our attorneys. They gave us a quote. They won't let us, we still can't get clearance to use their name, but they said our Hire An Esquire attorney was better than our Skadden attorney because his budget was cut. They had to use flexible contractors instead of calling an attorney for everything. So basically we saw this really had legs and it really worked. And then we started tracking metrics on it and testing it off of our platform. We hadn't built it into our platform. And we saw quite a difference in our metrics of callback rates, incident rates, and how many people were converting and wanting to hire our contractors full time. So then, in addition to just overall growth of the organization with new people and things going well, we decided it was time that we would build these into the product. So that started a probably about year-long journey between Lenny and Eric that they can speak much more to than I can, of finding a way to take all of these things that have been thought of as intangible and make them tangible, and then translate that into a software product. So translate all of this academic research and all of these things they had proving it, which had always been done kind of on paper and with psychologists interpreting the results, and make it very dynamic and putting it into a software product. And that is what Lenny and Eric, along with other members of our team, have done.
So let's hear it from Eric then. Eric, so what exactly did you do with all this data? How did you create this data? And then Lenny, how are we implementing it? Sounds like is a bit of how this works.
Excellent. So the field of industrial organizational psychology has been doing this for many decades. So the legal field usually tends to lag behind on new innovation. People like Google and Microsoft, they've been doing psychometric assessments for a while now. So we're kind of leveling the playing field and giving our clients basically an industrial organizational psychologist in their pocket. We give them really easily interpretable dimensions so that they can gauge a candidate's potential fit for a certain job. And we built that into our product. So that comes from several different things. We do a personality work style test. We do a behavioral interview, and we cross-reference this with other data on our platform to make sure that the data is all good.
All right. And how does, so as you guys have like a customer relations management on everybody like me who has submitted the survey that I took, is that all in your CRM? So you have an idea of particular candidates' qualifications for a particular engagement?
Exactly. So every job that's posted, we do something called a job analysis, where the client goes through which competencies would be important for this role. Based on those competencies that they select, we have certain personality traits that have been shown to correlate with performance in that area. So we match it together, and then we combine it. We take sort of a big data approach. Every attorney that's ever taken our assessment is compared to one another, so we can give you kind of more accurate results using more data, as opposed to like, let's say a small firm wants to do this. They don't really have a lot of other people to compare. So the data doesn't have as much use. And that's why, go ahead.
I should clarify, it's not in a CRM. It is our platform.
It is your platform.
Yeah, it is. All these other brick and mortar recruiting agencies try to store data in their CRM. Ours is very dynamic in our platform. And as soon as you post a job, you instantly get candidate recommendations. And when they apply, you actually see their fit score. So you actually see their percentages. So it's instant. It's not the brick and mortar where you have to go through a recruiter and get information and results. It's very dynamic.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you for that clarification. And then what do you do? What do you use this information? So this information is now good for both those looking for the firm and those looking for the job, right? Because now they're a better match for each other.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you do with all this data now, Lenny?
Well, yeah, that's where the challenging part really comes in, because we have to take that extra step and make the match. And that's essentially what we've been trying to do, since the very beginning. We've always compared what we're doing to, being very similar to like a dating app or a dating website. We're trying to, make the perfect match between the employment seeker and the employer. So, it does actually make our job a little bit more difficult in some way, because now we have so many different points of data that we really need to be thinking about and making sure we're accounting for. So that certainly is a challenge, but I think we've been doing a pretty good job of that so far, just based on some of those results we've seen with the first iterations on the assessment systems that we've built. Luckily, we are at a point now where we actually have a really great dev team that's helping to just keep our product moving forward, and that's really been helpful in managing all of this new capability that we have now.
Excellent. And I do want to take a moment here and thank Ivan for making it. Thank you.
Hey,
Ivan.
guys. Was it
Hi,
Lenny,
Ivan.
Catherine, Julie, and Eric?
Hi.
Hey.
And last
Ivan?
but not least, Nick.
Thank you. Good to see you. Good to see you. So, yeah, Ivan, I'm not sure if you were here when Julie and I, we did a episode 22. You may have been stationed abroad at the time. So I think that, I don't remember. Julia, did you and Ivan meet in the past?
I've spoken to Ivan before. We did 2 different podcasts, though.
Right. We did a remake.
Yeah, I don't remember which one.
Okay, so you had met him before. I couldn't recall. I think you were stationed abroad when we did we'll call it a remix.
Yeah, I think it was a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that sounds about right. So all right. I have to step back here because Catherine hasn't had a chance. And my view of the COO is often putting out fires, or often keeping things on track. So there's a lot going on, and a lot going on in this interview right now. We've got this is more than we normally do. So which is why I wanted to bring you guys on, because you have had some huge success and some great numbers and great growth. So Catherine, how do you keep them all together? Is it like herding cats a lot of the time?
Yeah, I mean, not in terms of not in the insulting way that one would say about people who can't be organized. No, actually our team is really truly incredible, and I think it's more about stepping back and being able to look at what everyone has to offer and making sure that we're sort of incorporating everyone's education and talents and their viewpoint. And I think one of the things that we really worked to put in place in terms of culture, which is one of those things that seems like it's kind of a fluffy, fun topic, but actually does yield results if done right, is that we want to hear great ideas from everyone. And we don't have any toxic egos in the company. And because of that,
Nice.
When you have a leadership team like ours, where everyone is really open to hearing ideas from anyone, I can't take credit for finding Eric as much as I would love to, but,
You could have it.
we did hire him, part-time as like a pretty small role. And he came in with some really great ideas. And because we had an environment where someone can come in who's only maybe working for like 5 to 10 hours a week, and we don't necessarily have expectations that they're going to come in and change our business model and give us something amazing that we can put into the secret sauce, if you will. Because we have a culture where we're open to those kinds of things, it allows us to grow in really interesting, unpredictable, but amazing ways. And so I don't think it's hurting cats so much as just leaving space open for everybody to kind of contribute what they have.
Yeah, and I don't ever mean that in the derogatory term.
No, I didn't think
yeah, it's just, I know how difficult it can be with a staff, and you've got a pretty robust staff now, and bigger than many legal technology companies that we've interviewed in the past. You've got, you're well on your way to 20 staff members, and that's a big job.
And we're dispersed too, which does, that was a struggle for us. I feel like when I first came on board was having people on different coasts and in different offices and trying to make sure that everybody kind of is communicating. And we've come up with some ways to make sure that everybody's has opportunities to communicate and stay on the same page, which is totally possible, but you just have to be extremely intentional about it. And I think sometimes dispersed work groups can kind of like get into a pop fly situation where everybody thinks somebody else has it and nobody has it.
Right.
Can you elaborate on what communications tools you guys are currently using?
Well, nothing super fancy. We use Google Hangouts, or Google Meeting as it's now been rebranded.
Wait, what's the rebrand? I haven't even heard of the rebrand.
Google Meeting?
Oh, I didn't hear that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, so they split Hangouts and Meeting. So Meeting is like the Google for Business tool, and Hangouts is the, casual, just chatting with your friends tool. But yeah, we do like daily calls with our operations team, just so everybody has a chance to like catch up on what's going on and nobody's left out of the loop.
Yeah, that's it. And are you guys Slack? Yeah.
Love it and hate it.
Right. So for immediate stuff, you're using Slack, and for Google Meeting now. And your ops tempo is just daily meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, we do one daily meeting. And we usually try to keep it really quick if we can. And then if there's like really relevant stuff, then we get more, a little bit more in depth.
I think too, though, over time, things have changed a lot, because over time, a lot of it's been the different people that have come to the company. So we've also started using our own psychometric assessments. Eric's altered them slightly to make them not just for lawyers, but for our team. So I think that our team has evolved over time to become just people that gel better together. And that's also really helped.
Yeah.
And with that, and also again, with Catherine keeping us more organized and on track, we are definitely better at setting goals and knowing where we're going, and then keeping everybody going towards that ship, and towards everybody on the same ship going towards the same point. And then you have the communication tools and the check-ins and the meetings, but everyone knows and is on the same page with what direction we're going in. And even with the psychometric assessments, our goal was always to get people the best matches, whether finding the best job or the best attorney, very quickly. And we didn't necessarily, I think one of the best things that happened, especially when Catherine came on and the company transformed a bit, is we started looking at the goal instead of a lot of process and structure on how to get there. So we looked at, hey, we have this client, we want to help them solve a problem. We want to get them these unicorns or diamonds in the rough, or whatever you want to call it. And then we saw that somebody had a way to do it. So it pretty much all came together by everything's been on about getting to the same goal, and just a group of really smart, creative, dedicated people who want to find how to get to that goal and don't have an ego about it.
That's fantastic. If I'm not mistaken, Julia, I know you've been with the company since 2011, that you were a founder, but are you the only one currently who has been with it the whole time, or is there somebody else on staff?
No, Lenny's the longest, I believe. Lenny came on pretty early. And
okay.
I should clarify too, when we started in 2011, it was me and two amazing co-founders, and we all had day jobs. And I was the youngest. They kind of liked the idea that they were older and adulting and had like mortgages and were married and had kids on the way. So two great guys that are still supportive of the company and on board, but they couldn't play startup. Right. So Really, I would say the kind of modern incarnation of the company was 2014 when we closed our first round of funding. Before that, it was like a little fun nights and weekend project where we, threw in a little bit of our own pocket, our little day job money for servers and everything. So it was really in 2013 when we went out to raise money, closed the round in 2014. And that's when we were actually, they were supportive, but they had to step out and stay on their real jobs. And I was able actually to hire people and build a team.
Yeah. And certainly no disrespect to those guys. It's great that they're still supportive of the company, but I just for the long term, because now you're going on 8 years now, and people come and go. So that's interesting that in Lenny, you came on when?
I believe in 2015.
2015.
March. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So funding this is a great topic. Most of our folks who come on are looking for funding. You guys have had several series, I believe now, right? Can you tell us a little bit about it? Because not everybody's had the success that you've had.
Yeah, so I think that there's a couple of things that we all need to be really upfront about that I was very naive about when I started. When you look at the success of founders, the most likely indicator if you'll be successful, and when you look at most people who are successful, it's your socioeconomic status. So it's what family you come from and what connections you have. So like most of our team, we're all from pretty middle class backgrounds. My parents were both inner city public school teachers. The backgrounds of a lot of our team are pretty similar to that. So you hear these stories about people raising money, and then you learn more as you're in this world more about how people raise this money. And it's often they're from a very wealthy family and they had connections to help do it. So we are still at the angel round. We haven't raised, we've raised from seed funds, but we haven't raised major institutional rounds. And okay. I will say that just to be upfront, raising money has been the constant struggle for our company, because especially when we started, VCs, the data showed this at the time. I'm getting all of this from the statistics that I can study and look up. But in 2014 and 13, investors didn't like legal. You can read a ton about what happens with female founders and how you have to pitch 20 times as many investors, have 3x all the metrics, and you get a fraction of the funding at a half of the valuation. So,
and on top of that, you were in legal.
Yes. So basically, we had a really good angel investor, Super Angel, who was a very successful venture capitalist. He was a founder of Excel and DCM and BCA president or chairman. And basically, I had built a relationship with him over a year, introduced by another person who was involved with the company before. And he really didn't have much interest until he saw a lot of people in his circles being impacted by the changes in the legal market. So I pitched probably close to 1,000 investors, I would say angel investors. And when he came on board after a year and a half of building a relationship with him, and it was, again, just when he saw the changes in the legal industry impacting his own circle, more people signed on once we had him signed on. And there were, I will say, again, it wasn't, you read these magical stories in TechCrunch, and ours was I think we probably reached out to every angel investor in the country in some way. One of those other people we reached out to was Google's lawyer number 2. Sent her a cold email. She actually responded to it and agreed to meet with me. I asked her why. She said it was the product she wished she had when she was building Google's legal department. So if you contact enough people, you will find a few of those situations, but it's an incredibly time-consuming, draining thing to do that does distract from the company. And my other founders, I had no responsibilities. I went to school on scholarships. I had no student loans. I could couch surf around the country. I had friends from all over the place from college. I could couch surf around the country and get cheap plane and train tickets and do this. A lot of people who have other responsibilities or lots of student loans aren't in the position to do what I did. So I know that's probably not the answer I was expected to give, but I don't mean to discourage people, but fundraising is this rabbit hole that it's really a lot harder for people that don't come from a certain place and have a certain skin color and socioeconomic status and gender.
No, I think that's great. I think it's a great story. I think that's necessary to help people. As I said, most of our guests are early stage. We kind of made that change when we brought the show back in 2018. We went for early stage. Well, most of them are trying to figure out how to get to the next step and trying to figure out. And I think it's a good learning experience to hear from you guys, or you ladies and guys exactly how it's been to raise money and just how exhausting it's been to raise money.
And if our company would be much bigger if we could raise more money. It's been a big barrier to our growth. When we were doubling month over month, our revenue was doubling month over month, nobody would give us a Series A. So it's also like, even when you raise some capital, and we've raised more than a lot of companies, and I feel very fortunate that we have, because in addition to just spending years on couch surfing, it's also about getting a few lucky breaks here and there too. Mm-hmm. So I feel very lucky that we've raised funding, but it also, even if you raise angel funding and you hit all the metrics investors tell you to come back with, you still don't necessarily get to grow the way you would want to.
Good to know. Ivan, what have you got?
All right, let's go into the numbers if you want to talk about the numbers. What are you guys looking like in the last 3 months in terms of transactions, the revenue? Are you at liberty to talk about it, or would you like to?
Well, I can just say, I'll say this. We did close to 1,000 placements last year with about 2.5 recruiters, which our machine did a lot of the work. So I believe our machine placement rate last year, what was it, like 58%, I think?
That sounds right.
I think we were actually 67% by the very end of the year.
It was on the more,
Our machine's doing most of the work. So that's how we can do about 1,000 placements in a year with a very tiny recruiting team. What the market that I'm most excited about is our self-serve market, as we call it. So these are small firms. They find us online through Google AdWords and searching, or they hear about us somewhere. They sign up on their own. We do verify them. We verify everyone on both sides of our platform. And then they're the ones, they post a job, they fill out our great job form, asking them about their work environment, and then they hire on their own. Basically, they message attorneys, and we're not really involved in the transaction. I mean, we are, but we aren't hand-holding like a traditional recruiter would. That has been growing about 60% quarter over quarter, that revenue. And the number of signups is accelerating along similar lines too. So those are the markets we're really excited about. We switched over we call it our white glove, which tends to be the bigger firms and bigger clients. We used to do one-off placements with HR departments, and we've moved to more strategic relationships where we're working with pricing departments, and we're a sole or one of a small group of vendors for an alternative legal staffing unit. So we've been working with LPOs as well. So we've transitioned that over to larger, more strategic partnerships, and we're really gung-ho and putting a lot of time and resources and a lot of our money into advertising dollars for that small market. It grew over 200% last year, and we're trying to increase that growth even more this year. And we're very much on track too.
That's excellent.
So last year was essentially your breakout year. Would that be an accurate statement? Or your first breakout year, I should say.
No, we've had a lot of breakout years.
Or has it been steady growth the whole time?
No, we had really fast growth. I would say when we closed our first round of funding, that year we grew 7x the year when we closed our first round of funding. And then after that, we grew about 5x. So we were making real money at that point. We weren't and that was when actually we could not get a Series A. We were our revenue was doubling monthly. And it was like, oh, you're very cute. You're very passionate about what you're doing. This is adorable. Like, you should go a lifestyle business. And we're like,
I've got a real business right here.
Yeah. And so, I would say after that, when we couldn't get, and again, with the money we were getting, we were only closing a few $100,000 in those first few years, but it was enough. We'd been going from nothing to really accelerate us. So when we tried to do a substantial round to keep that level growth up, which I think we could have if we got the money, we couldn't. So we've been more growing like a steadier, probably 30% plus year over year with, not any real funding, I would say, or little bits of funding at a time. Our self-serve revenue though, that's something that we focused on that for a few reasons. One, we always meant to be a tech platform and disintermediate recruiters. We do have recruiters to vet and talk to attorneys and give them personal attention. But we always wanted the administrative and boring tasks to basically be automated. So recruiters could spend their time on the high value things, and attorneys could get to a recruiter when they really needed them for something important. So the self-serve market is what we really believe we can fuel and grow despite usually being starved for capital. So that's where, again, that revenue has been growing pretty steadily over time. And last year we put more time and resources into it, and it started accelerating faster. We recently raised a little bit more capital that we're throwing at that as well, and we hope that will make it accelerate even faster and get to the point where I would say we're going back to our more exponential growth that we had when we were first able to get proportional to our total revenue.
Excellent.
So tell us, Lenny, what are the biggest technical issues you're facing right now? Because you've got a very busy development team, as you mentioned before, and Julia had told me there's more requests, because she told me this in a phone conversation. I don't think it was anything that I can't say, Julia, but you can tell me if I'm wrong and I can cut it out. But there's more requests for API and things like that than you can keep up with, and that's pretty common for a startup. Oh, if we could do this or if we could do that, and so what are the biggest issues facing you right now, and the number one issue you want to solve within the next 2 or 3 months?
Yeah, that's a very good question. We definitely have a lot of issues that we're facing, and we're, as a dev team, I think, always fighting an uphill battle here, just in terms of the amount of work that we want to get done versus the resources that we have. And I think really the most challenging aspect of this job is really just trying to model what is essentially currently a real world process, right? The recruiting process right now, that involves actually talking to a person physically, or communicating over email, and we're trying to take that process and automate it behind a web application. So that right off the bat, I think is just a very challenging thing to try to do, because there's really a lot that goes into that. And then when you kind of just add more on top of that, so first of all, myself, when I started working here, I had absolutely no experience in the legal industry at all. I had no interest really in pursuing one either, but I just came across this job and thought it was a great idea. And so, not having a thorough background in law, and having to learn just a lot of these basic concepts is definitely a challenge, just for myself, and I think as well for, some of our other developers or anyone else who doesn't actually have that law background. And then, you take that one step further. Now we're adding a whole psychology layer on top of this. And, we have to really, really rely on Eric here to help us with just the foundation for that and the science behind it. But, luckily, it is great to work with him, because we can really, really work closely with him and just try to, model what he is trying to do with his assessments, and just model that into our software. And that's always a fun project to work on, something where you can, just work closely with somebody who really understands, how the software should perform.
Excellent.
As far as, going ahead and what we want to do, I think, really the biggest goal for me is really just to turn everything up like one more notch. Like we have to start, getting a little bit more precise.
Question. So you're basically going to crank it up to 11. One more notch.
Exactly. Yes, we're going to try to turn it up to 11. Really across the board. I mean, we need to get better at making sure we're making that perfect match. First of all, that's again the core product is we're making that match. So we need to make sure that's as accurate as possible. We need to make sure we're using all of the tools that we have available to do that as best we can. And so that's really the target. We're trying to just make that as accurate as possible.
Can you discuss a little bit more of the feedback loop you're using the psychology, and then how do you determine the success rate on matching the two sides of the marketplace?
I can yeah, I'll speak to that a bit, because we set up our company metrics and our goals.
Perfect.
So one thing we look at is we have something called a candidate incident rate. So that includes everything from a candidate not showing up for a phone screen or not emailing someone back and being responsive once they've started a conversation with them, to somebody not working out on a job and leaving. So before we started psychometrics, our incident rate was 4%, which is actually really good for temp agencies. That's like good within the industry. After now, currently, it's less than 1%. And we've seen a steady decline, and we kind of iterate based on different things that we're seeing. Another thing is we look at callback rate. So we have feedback surveys, but what people say and what you don't listen to what people say, watch what they do. So before psychometrics, 17% of attorneys were called back again by the same person for another project. And again, that's really good because a lot of our jobs are truly one-time things. You need a local counsel in a weird county in Nevada once, or you're calling someone in because it's a specialty you don't have on staff that you don't normally come across. So 17% is not shabby by any means because a lot of jobs are truly one-time jobs. Post psychometrics, it was 40% of attorneys got called back, which is super high considering I would say probably only about half of our jobs have opportunities for, a callback. And then also some people will keep the same attorney on the same project for 3 years. So based on our life cycle, 40% is amazing. And again, it's over doubled since we've iterated the psychometrics. The other metric we look at is we look at Fortune 500 and AM Law 200 clients that hire our contractors full-time. A lot of our small firms prefer contractors, and they'll even take people they know or were on their payroll and send them through us for efficiency reasons. So we look at AM Law 200 and Fortune 500 because they're the ones that usually have the budget and the will to hire full-time. Before our psychometric assessments, they converted 4% of the contractors we sent to them to full-time hires. Now the rate is around 18%, and it's actually rising, which is, we want everyone to be in the job they want, but we like it better when people stay through our platform instead of getting hired full-time. But that number keeps rising, and it is a success metric of how much someone likes them when they go through the politics and whatever jockeying they need to do to get full-time headcount and budget for somebody. So those are the three main ones we track. We of course look at feedback surveys too, but we found hard metrics to actually be more effective than people tend to try to be generally, unless they've had a really bad experience, they tend to be nice and say everything's good.
I didn't realize my question was going to be so easy for you. I won't ask that anymore.
We track everything through our platform. Part of our issues with recruiting is it was so subjective. And I was an attorney and I saw these horrible contract attorneys, and you found out that they drank with the recruiter. And then there would be these amazing contract attorneys that they're like, oh, this is my first job with the agency. No one ever called me. So it was really about being data driven. And one thing I will say, diversity was not our goal. We cared about diversity, all of that good stuff, but our main goal was just making sure people were happy and they got the best contractors. Once we started using psychometrics and kind of explaining to our client, okay, this person is a good fit and here's why, randomly, we did this study by hand. We don't track race and gender in our platform, but we did it from knowing the contractors. Our women and minority placement rate went up 15% when we started using psychometrics. So again, not an intended consequence, a great one, but we saw that a lot of hiring, as we all know, traditional hiring processes are very ineffective. You're more likely to be successful if you flip a coin and 50-50 than have a human recruit somebody. So bias was getting in the way. And once people saw data, they started making different choices, and it just leveled the playing field more. And by chance, not by chance, but more women and minorities were hired once there wasn't a layer of bias against them, or people got out of their reptile brain and more into their logical brain when they were assessing candidates.
That sounds like that's an Eric move. That sounds like his data is what had contributed to that.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
And Eric, is it a master's in industrial psychology that you have, or is it?
I have an MS.
MS, okay. Yeah, I am familiar with some experts who have that background, and it's you can go and testify on these things later on when you're ready and charge ridiculous rates for that. But
I'm planning on it.
Yeah, good. And you can do that with your full-time job as well. Those things you can do. Tell us.
I'm going to put a non-compete, no recruiting.
I don't recruit. I just recommend.
I will say though, we're currently in the process of locking down pilots with some major law firms that want to use our tool for their own internal recruiting, so their own candidates and their own permanent hiring process. So we will be bringing in Eric, of course, and our team to do a slightly more consultative approach as we work out this program and see the adaptations that we need to make.
And now, will that be a separate service that you'll be offering?
Yes, we're piloting it right now because a
Piloting.
few major firms were so impressed with what we were doing for flex hiring. They said we want to use this for our permanent hiring. And there's quite a few initiatives around talent at major firms right now because they're having trouble retaining talent and they're having trouble getting good talent that stays.
Yeah. Yeah.
So make sure you get him a company branded logo on his forehead.
Yeah.
And a shirt while he's actually conducting that sort of business on behalf of the company.
I do want to go, and I don't want to keep any of you all night. I know it's getting late on the East
I'm
Coast.
serious, Eric.
Yeah.
Eric, how do you feel about microchipping?
Oh, great. Who
I
doesn't
think
like it?
Ivan's got some paramilitary plans for you right
Yeah.
They use this stuff in the military already. Actually.
Yeah. So how did you guys, let me ask you this, and I don't want to keep you all night, but it is a good question. How did you come to the realization that you needed the industrial psychology? And Eric, and maybe Eric and Catherine and Julia can hit this all together.
Well,
how did this come to pass?
I think one of the main things is it has unlimited scalability. So if the clients are completing their own job forms, and the candidates are completing their own psychometric assessments, you don't really need us as the middleman. All the kind of foundation is there for them to match each other. So unlimited scalability is probably the biggest benefit of doing something like this.
Okay, but how did Hire an Esquire figure out we got to bring in the psychometric?
Well, so
By accident.
Okay, great.
kind of.
Yeah, I guess where was the inflection point and who made the decision? I mean, what was the decision point to come to
think
realization?
The driving factor really is that we're in a position where we know that the traditional methods are not working. And we're also in a position where we're working with clients whose expectations might feel really unrealistic sometimes. And also the business that we're in is connecting people with people, which is one of the hardest things that you can do. Like almost anything is easier than that because people feel really unpredictable. And someone who seems really polished and great and has a great resume and they went to Harvard Law and they seem like they're just the perfect candidate can go in there and like drop an F-bomb or something, or do something that you would never think that they would do. And we have, like, I think our philosophy is kind of, okay, so maybe traditional methods don't tell us how we can solve this problem, but we need to find a way to solve it because we can't have candidates going into interviews and doing something that's going to look bad for us.
Right.
And also just be a bad experience for the client. Their time is valuable. So, having that drive to be able to figure out we have to have a way to solve this, and then the serendipity piece of it of having Eric be present when we're asking that question, that was kind of the overlap of things just sort of aligning in a way that allowed us to put those pieces together.
And I do think it was inevitable. So we're taking a very human, intuitive process and we're trying to make it scientific and build it into technology. So even before a lot of the people here now were at the company, we were looking into things like sentiment analysis. Like, can we tell something about the person by the messages they're sending back and forth through the platform? So we were already looking at like, how do we quantify something into hard data? And we were looking at outside services on sentiment analysis. We were looking at a lot of third-party stuff because we knew these recruiters think they have instincts. And people's instincts, and I mean, I'll say this for myself too, my own hiring instincts were horrible. Like we had so many messes, which I'm not alone. That if you look at hiring rates, I was right in line with the statistics. But we don't know, we don't know what we think we know. So when you're making a technology platform, you're trying to make things clean, transparent, fair, and data-driven. You need to find a way. And I think we were always looking for a way through sentiment analysis. We played around with the caliper tests, which psychometrics is actually a good, faster translation of that.
Well, those are psychometrics, I mean.
Yeah. Well, I mean, our psychometrics are I would say, abbreviated, more agile version of getting to the same results as the caliper test. So I think we were always looking for these things. We did caliper before Eric came on board, actually. And then Eric was kind of like the missing link to put it all together and say, okay, this is what you need to do.
This is, I just had the the idea that this is Moneyball for legal recruiting.
Exactly.
That's the feeling I get, that all the recruiters telling people, well, this is what I think of this potential candidate, and this is who I think of that candidate, and then somebody comes in and assigns a bunch of variables and data variables to them, and now we have actual data to go on.
Mm-hmm.
It's
That's what we actually call it, is Moneyball for legal hiring. So.
Yeah, that's oh, do you really?
Yeah, actually.
I was hoping to trademark that and then sell it to you, but I guess I can't. I guess I'm late to the game. Well, guys, any last thoughts? Because I know it's getting late over there. Any last thoughts you'd like to share with the early stage startups in the legal tech community about your journey? And this can come from any one of you.
I would just say sales are so important. Get in there and close deals, especially if you are a woman or a minority. You will find that it's actually law. It's easier to sell to lawyers than to venture capitalists. So as much as you can do without needing to raise money, and law is actually, when you look at the data, it's a lot more, it's a lot less racist and a lot less misogynist than the VC world. So I would go sell as much as you can first, and actually try not to take funding, and see how sellable you can make your product and how you can arrange it to not need funding. Okay,
excellent. Eric, any last minute thoughts?
Not particularly.
No. Okay.
He's ready to get back to work.
Yeah. All right, Catherine, how about you? Last minute thoughts?
I think that the team that you choose and the people that you surround yourself with make a huge difference in any small early stage startup. That's going to be such a difference maker. I mean, I've seen, so Hire An Esquire is my first legal startup, but I have worked in the startup world previously, and just sort of like choosing bad teammates can just be, it can cost you so big. And I think being like, really intentional and mindful of the people that you work with and surround yourself with, and that they're really like outcome driven and also really just open to hearing new ideas, and are willing to work with other people to hear those ideas and work towards a common solution. Like, that's huge. And that's something that we have that I think has made literally everything that we've done possible. So I think it makes a huge difference.
Excellent. Lenny, last minute development thoughts?
No, I mean, I would definitely have to echo Catherine a little bit there. I think from the software side of things, when you're developing a software product, I think there are really, two really major factors that account for that, for your productivity in developing software. One is just the cohesiveness of the team. You really have to be really close to your coworkers and your teammates, and really depend on them and make sure that they're there to support you, and that you're there to support them. And then the second thing that plays into that is technical debt. That's something that we always have to struggle with. I think every software project has to do that to some degree, and all I can say is it's just something to always be mindful about, and that's kind of been our strategy with that.
All right. And for people to get in touch with the team, it's hireanesquire.com, right?
Yes.
And I will say that the team is all over Twitter. There's quite a few team members on Twitter, and they're quite responsive and fun, which is such a relief for the legal community. Ivan, last minute thoughts?
Let's see here. I don't want to hold you guys up. You guys keep plugging away, I guess. That's all I have to say. I mean, it's amazing what you've been able to build over the last few years. It's impressive. Just keep cranking away.
Yeah.
Don't put that glass ceiling on yourself. Just crush through it.
Trust me. We won't go there.
If it was that easy.
I thought you, coming from a certain era and a certain type of family, you don't think it's there. And then you're like, oh, it's not glass, it's bulletproof glass. Yeah. So it's really hard to say until you've been there.
Yeah.
So I'll just say that it's really hard to know until you've been there. And even we've all our whole team, like the men on our team are amazing too. And we've had a lot of great allies And they've even been shocked. We've all been banging our head on the bulletproof glass together and getting like ice picks and like figuring out a way to get through it.
No, but you're chipping away.
You are chipping away. I'll say this for Julia from what I recall from our first conversation or earlier conversations. I'll say this: you had broke into legal departments at some major companies from pretty early on, which is having access to and them using your service, which people are constantly trying to sell those services. So you've broken through some ceilings. I guess there's just more after that, but you've broke through some serious.
And I love talking to people in legal departments now and talking to law firms. I will take legal sales over fundraising any day. There are a lot of people they're looking for products. And again, I will say we've gotten a really good reception from them once you understand their problem. So I think that's less of a barrier than the other ones.
Yeah, you guys have had some just spectacular success. We're so glad that you came back for episode 50.
Episode 50.
And
yes.
And with that, we're excited to see just how many people get in here for episode 100. Like how many Hire An Esquire people can fit.
You guys
Sounds
know
like
the
a plan.
backstory of episode 50. Did you tell them, Nick, at the very beginning?
What back?
So we were going back and forth. We were actually discussing who should we bring back for episode 50. And then we did our analysis, and we thought, why not bring back the most successful startup that we felt should be back on, based on our personal metrics, which we won't disclose. But you guys are here.
Yeah.
So congratulations.
We did not have a psychometric survey to go by, but
I would be really gratified to know if it had anything to do with my use of Giphy on Twitter, because if it does, that would make my night.
Anybody who makes me laugh, they go up a few rungs. That's just the way it is.
Well, we have a very funny team, so we're going to be hard to beat.
Yeah, that is hard. That automatically gets a greater weight.
We cannot confirm or deny that, so that we don't discriminate on who we choose for the 100th episode.
But
no bias, no
bias. But it seems to be that you guys are skyrocketing in the right direction. So we thank you, Lenny, Eric, Catherine, and Julia. Thanks so much for coming back. We really appreciate it, and we wish you guys well.
Thanks for having us.
All right, and don't disappear. We'll have a few things for you afterwards. Thank you all
episode
for listening
50
to episode 50 of Legal Tech Live. We will see you next week for episode 51.
See ya.